What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of NYC Adoptee. Thanks for tuning in. Today is day 17 of my 30-day explorative journey, and I'm currently at this transitional stage. The first part, everything up until now, has been very linear and very event-based. So kind of chronicling what has happened in my life and trying to figure out the different paths and the different stories that played out. I got to the end of that about 2 videos ago, and now I need to tie those stories and the various findings that came about. I need to tie those together. So that's more of an abstract process, and I think that abstract process requires an abstract approach. So I'm turning more towards kind of an art-focused, artistic, drawing-based approach to figuring out how all of this works, which is a very new chapter to this whole saga. So I'm on day 17. This is a 30-day project in which I film every single day for 30 days straight. I'm posting 3 times a week, so it'll be a little delayed. But I'm on day 2 of drawing and trying to translate some of these thematic concepts to shapes and colors and an overall drawing of some sort. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something. So yesterday was the first day of that. Today's the second day. I want to start today's video by going over kind of what I laid out and what my intention is with some of the things that I put on paper, and then go into the actual drawing segment. I will at some point today jump on my motorcycle, as I have in almost every one of my videos, and talk through my post-drawing thoughts, and then who knows what else gets tacked onto the video. It depends on the day. So I'm going to start with explaining yesterday. I'll throw it up on the screen, but I did 4 different drawings. I had 4 separate pages. The first page, I struggled with settling into the drawing thing. So I kind of realized I need to lay out a blueprint within which the drawings can pop into, because I discovered a lot of things throughout the past 16 days. So the first page, I started with listing the 3 things that I know to have greatly affected all of the events that transpired. On the top left of the page, there's adoption. So that is, and I listed it as subconscious, because this is something that, through telling the story multiple times, I realized I kind of pushed to the background, but it still had a great effect on how I'm basically the baseline of my life. Under adoption, I put the qualities that I believe the concept of adoption to have imparted on my life, which are displacement, state of disconnect, unease, instability, and then I wrote baseline, and under that, worthlessness. So these are all things, adoption is the baseline. It made me feel displaced, disconnected, uneasy, unstable, and worthless. So I left that there. Moving to the right, I have learning disabilities. Learning disabilities put me in certain situations and conditions in my life, especially my early life, that then reinforced the subconscious adoption aspect. So it's kind of building on one another. Learning disabilities made me feel displaced again. Rejected, I said inadvertent, because it's, nobody was saying get out or you're dumb. It was more so I had to, my path as a young man was adjusted to accommodate for my learning disabilities, which continually put me in new environments that I did not fit into. So I wasn't overtly rejected. It was more so the natural progression, or the natural events that transpired were perceived as rejection by me. State of separation, I went to, through one of my storylines, which was my middle school era, was separated from everything that I knew to be kind of my foundation, which was the friends I grew up with and knew since kindergarten, and was displaced to a school upstate where I knew nobody, and was literally on the side of a highway in this school that was designed by a prison architect. So there was physical separation that took place. And then I put reinforcement at the bottom, which is a reinforcement of the concept of adoption. Separate from all of this, but largely incorporated into many parts of my life, is stability. despite the first 2 points, which seem like very unstable situations and concepts, I did have a lot of stability in my life. I had two parents in a loving, committed relationship. Both loved me and took very good care of me. But this stability masked both of these first two issues here, and in doing so made it more difficult to address these two things in real time. It was beneficial yet detrimental, and I categorized it as a mechanism because that through this stability, I was able to overlook both adoption and learning disabilities, which brought me to this point now in being disconnected and kind of out of touch with the underlying issues, while on the surface of it seeming totally stable and totally fine. Now, underneath these three blocks or sections, I kind of had a separate thought. I put the search for. So in my life, throughout all the different chapters that I went through in the previous videos, I realized that I was continually searching for acceptance is the primary thing that I've mentioned over and over again, but also comfort and permission to exist. Like I was looking for acceptance, which really is the thumbs up for your existence. It's saying we accept you for who you are, or what, for whatever criteria, we accept you and you can now exist is kind of the unspoken theme of acceptance, I suppose you could say. Now, the acquisition, I said on the right of this little chunk, the acquisition of comfort, acceptance, and permission to exist depends on your sense of self, your ability to exist. So like, which I suppose is kind of doubling up on sense of self, and belief that you belong. So I think actually I would probably separate this a little bit, and I would say that's in order to exist in the zone that is accepted, like once you achieve acceptance, you are then accepted. And in order to exist as someone who is accepted, you need to have a sense of self. You need to be able to exist in an unemotionally charged state, so not in reaction to anything else, but just because you can, to be at peace. And you need to believe that you belong. If you don't believe you belong in a group, you're not ever going to be at peace and be able to just be accepted. The acquisition of acceptance actually depends, so this is, I didn't correct this, actually depends on the circle that is directly below that when divided by the line. So the bottom half of the page, it depends on a process. So like in order to be accepted, there's a certain set of processes that take place in order to get to the point of being accepted, which is, I listed it as enter, you identify your endpoint, you embody desirable qualities, or you like the skills needed to achieve status quo or to fit in, and then you gain acceptance. Acceptance equals success. So here I have this circle here, which is kind of how my life has gone, and I've gone through the same circle many, many, many times, whether it's, lower school, middle school, high school, college, and then every one of my 16 restaurants that I've worked at, it's been the same cycle. However, the time frame within which this cycle occurs shortens with every job I got, with every stage I was at, but it's the same cycle. So entrance into the environment on the left bottom, and then in that crossover right there, you identify your endpoint. If you're at a restaurant, you have to identify, who's going to be who's the friendliest person who you can get along with, what set of skills do you need to know, what set of knowledge do you need to know. And then on the upswing here, on the right side of the circle, it says embody quality, so that you gain this in the restaurant, you gain the skills, you prove that you are, proficient on the floor, that you know everything about the menu, you know everything about the beverage list, right? And after a certain amount of time, however long that takes, you gain acceptance. So that's at the 12 o'clock mark on the circle. And then after acceptance, theoretically, that line should continue to just kind of go up or plateau, and you just exist in that space, right? You earn your thumbs up at your job and you can just perform the job. Like, what more do you want, right? But for me, I didn't know what to do at that stage. So instead, I kind of, as you see, the circle completes. It goes back down. So I go back down because I don't know. I realized I didn't know how to just exist regularly, which is what I have there on the left of the circle, says regular existence. That to me was uncomfortable, and I found that I couldn't just exist because my whole definition of myself was based on the embodied qualities side of the circle, which is that path to acceptance I got very good at, and I kept doing it. I kept doing it. But once I got acceptance, didn't know what to do with it. So I would exit. So that's on the right side and the bottom. That left side of the circle was so desirable, but also so uncomfortable once I got it. So this circle is kind of the path that I took over and over again. And this is something that I want to figure out how to evoke in pictures, in drawings, and shapes, in colors, right? Like, it's one thing to write a chart. It's another thing to really evoke this emotion, because there's a lot of stuff mixed in here, right? There's excitement. Well, there's optimism in the beginning. There's excitement on the way up. And then once you're at acceptance, it's like this, like euphoria, which is great. And then on the left side of the circle, trending downwards or going down, it's frustration and anger, but misguided. And then exit is kind of exhaustion. You're tired, and you know that another cycle is coming up. So those are the emotions I kind of want to evoke with this diagram. And yeah, here on the bottom right, there's mechanism and state. So the mechanism by which you is the process of gaining acceptance. The state is existing in acceptance, and I didn't know how to do the state side of that little chart. So that was the first page and the first stab at trying to like pull out one of the themes that I've been wrestling with over the past episodes. The second page that I have up here, I started at the top here, the sense of self and acceptance section. There's a process here of, you have your sense of self, theoretically, which is something that I believe I never had due to being adopted. Being adopted naturally displaced me at a young age, and I spent a majority of my years trying to find a way to place myself, find a way to situate myself in which I could have some semblance of self. And then on the other side, there's acceptance. Now, I think at this stage here, I realized that acceptance, or really what I previously discussed, existence within the state of acceptance depends on a sense of self, which is what I wrote in this box on the right. The upper right box depends on sense of self, belief, and ability to exist. So this little left and right line here is incomplete, and kind of, I got a little stuck here and then moved on to this chart here, where I tried to chart it and look at each of my stages here. So I had lower school, middle school, high school, college, restaurant 1 through, etc. That's on the bottom line. I forget what axis that is, X maybe. And then on the vertical, the vertical side on the left, I have the different stages of that circle I was drawing, which is identify your endpoint, embody the qualities that will get you acceptance, and then the actual acceptance. And at that actual acceptance, I drew a line across to kind of signify that there's two planes here. There's underneath that kind of squiggly line across the entire chart are the steps to gain acceptance. Once you cross that threshold, you are now in this big blank open land that is acceptance. So all you have to do is exist on the top left corner of that chart. With each of these lines this didn't play out how I wanted to, but this is kind of how I see it. My path was very fragmented because lower school, middle school, high school is all separate, and college is all separate, but those three were separate lines. So it was very fragmented. Like lower school, I was accepted, but it was kind of a straight up line. I don't know how to visualize this yet. It was an accelerated path to acceptance because you're young and you're kids and you're always, you just fit in or you don't. But I did. I had friends there. So it just happened. Like I don't think I processed how to identify and embody the qualities that I needed to learn to be friends. I just was, and to have a solid base. Middle school was a special school, so I didn't even get that far. I didn't even want to be accepted there, so I didn't get that opportunity. High school, I restarted and I identified that I was the film guy. I embodied the qualities of a film guy, and people liked me for it. So I achieved acceptance, but it was cut short. That's what those little lines are. It was cut short because you go to college. Restart in college, film wasn't the thing. So everything I took from high school, irrelevant. I identified that being in a working class job with exposure to everybody would get me, in the circle. I embodied the qualities that people found to be cool, which was the cool Asian guy from New York City who has like stylish clothes and hangs out with black people. And then I was accepted through that. College ends, cut short, restart again. Similar pattern to most people, but for me it was quite detrimental. And then every restaurant that I worked at, I followed the same pattern of identify, embody, accept. But then once I got to acceptance, I did a quick U-turn, fucked off, and started again in restaurant 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to etc., right? And that was a voluntary choice because I was unfamiliar with the existing part of this whole process. So this needs work in terms of like how it's visualized, because it doesn't seem as detrimental as like, oh, and then here, that line that I drew across, I realized the tenure at each restaurant that I worked at shortened. So I need this line across really goes down because the rate at which I do a U-turn and get out of a place that I'm accepted increases as time goes on. So somehow I need to convey that. But this is an idea that will have something to do with a drawing later on. I'm gonna leave that one there. Third page, I started getting a little frustrated because I was doing too much of this laying out and I wasn't drawing, I was just making charts. So I needed to get some visuals out there. So it's kind of hard to read now, but this is playing with, again, that top line that was unfinished on the second page. I have underneath the like human head looking thing, I have sense of self, right? So we're starting with sense of self. To the right of that is acceptance. And then to the right of that is existence. Now, I was trying to figure out what depends on what, which of these elements depends on what. Existence, all the way to the right, depends on acceptance and sense of self. In that, once you are accepted, you then can exist. But you only can exist if, one, you are accepted, and one, if you are accepted, two, if you have some sense of self. Because if you don't know who you are and you aren't really a person, you've just kind of mimicked the things to get you in, then you can't really exist with yourself or with anyone else. You're just this empty vessel. Now, in order to be accepted, you have to do the stages that I was talking about, which I became very good at that. So I became very good at the mechanisms by which you get accepted. That was what I was good at. But sense of self, I haven't figured out how to find myself or how to be myself. I didn't know who I was. So what is that based off of? Well, I've decided yesterday, I think, sense of self, knowing yourself, depends on your nature, who you are as a person, just like baseline, nature versus nurture. So like who you naturally were, and nurture. Nurture is your conditioning that your parents or your surrounding people, your environment shapes you, how your environment shapes you. But in order to be able to separate the two, you need to know the base material that was shaped by nurture, of which I don't have because I'm adopted. So that, following it that way, still there's missing pieces, but it made me really frustrated. So I started putting down little graphics here. I'll start at the left. Nature, I drew like a broken piece, I don't know, foundation is like this cracked slate. I don't even know what it is, but I just knew that my foundation, the foundation off of which nurture can occur, and therefore which sense of self can be based off of, is broken and fragmented and missing something. So I threw a bunch of words and just wrote down the emotions that I was feeling: fragmented, flawed, unstable, unknown, non-existent. Those are the things I feel about my nature, my base core material nature. Under nurture, I wrote grateful, burdened, misled, objectified. Those are things I feel about the way I was shaped and then what was given to me, really my privilege growing up. Those are the words that flood my head when I think of that. And I drew like a mask because I feel like it's a mask and I don't know what's underneath it. It's a really shitty mask, but it's a mask. To the right, sense of self is kind of this empty outline of a person's head because I don't have it. I don't know what it is. To me, it's whatever works, adaptive, and amorphous. So my sense of self really for a majority of my life has been get in where you can fit in. Usurp the qualities of the people who surround you in the industry or the school or the environment that surrounds you and get really good at that thing. But those things aren't really me. I don't know how they differ from me. I don't know how they're similar to me because I don't know me. So there's no way to, I'm just this amorphous blob that kind of is very good at shape shifting, kind of like a chameleon. So that's that section. To the right is acceptance. Couldn't think of a visual, but I wrote participation award because once I get, it feels condescending. I should put that down. So add condescending to that. So participation award because when you're accepted, it's like, oh, great, thank you. Like it feels like I've done a good job at like performing the qualities by which you, whoever you is, the restaurant, the school, the person at the coffee shop, I've done a good job portraying the qualities that you use to determine whether or not you want to accept someone. Like, you know, I've done this so many times. I'm good at this. Thank you so much for your thumbs up. Like, fuck off, you know? So that participation award is like the perfect thing in my head. It's like a kid getting a award for showing up to soccer, even if he didn't play any of the games, you know? It's just whatever. Exciting and triumphant are from my earlier years because when I first gained acceptance into restaurants, it did feel really good. I just hadn't had that before, so it felt really good. I don't want to ignore that, but as time went on, it was less potent. Exhilarating fits into that as well. So it's this initial rush of like, yes, I made it, but at the end of the day, when I think about it, I suppose when I'm older, it just is based off of nothing, so it doesn't mean anything to me anymore. And then all the way to the right, existence. I wrote initially, I did this hole. It's supposed to be a hole in the paper, which is just meaningless. The existence in the state of acceptance doesn't mean anything to me. It's nothing because I don't know myself. So how could I just enjoy this time, right? I said, joke's on you, start again, because this is how it feels, is like once I gain acceptance, like, oh, what the fuck do I do with this shit? So I got to start again. Let's do this thing again and again and again, right? So that's the emotion that's evoked. Uncomfortable, bored, and unpleasant are the things that I feel when I'm just left to exist and be seemingly happy. So this was a turning point for me because I really forced out some emotion onto this page. Now, it's not a painting or anything, but it is a step in the right direction and the framework within which I think I can create some things to represent what I put on this page. And then my last page here makes me uncomfortable, but I'm sharing it anyway. Terrible drawing, but I had to get a full-on drawing. So I said, no more words, just put shapes and lines and draw something down. So this was my last stab at trying to put something on the page. And I did. I will say the curvy line area is absolute garbage, and I just hate it. But the right side, the top right side with this weird shape was actually really good. There's a bit of square, a bit of triangle, a bit of circle, a bit of plumpness, a bit of building looking thing. So just overall, when I draw a lot of shapes and colors, and I don't wasn't really trying to do anything. I was just letting the pen go, and I realized there's a bunch of different shapes in this thing, which is very, I suppose, representative of what I'm feeling right now. A lot of confusion, not sure which way to go. When I think back to how I used to draw and how I used to paint, it was always at a time when I just needed to be, and I would put on some music and kind of vibe, and it's an extension. It was a real extension of my mood. Sometimes it would come out super like puffy clouds and funny characters. Other times it'd be super angular, and like the characters, their eyebrows would be furrowed, right? Like it was, if I was feeling bad and down, it would be the former. Wait, no, the latter. And if I was feeling upbeat and happy, it'd be the former. So how I draw, the shapes I draw are very representative of my mood and my emotion. And so I think this perfectly actually articulates, it's not a masterpiece or anything, but it does speak to the frustration and kind of confusion I'm at right now trying to start this creative process. 'Cause I don't know quite how to go, which is why I started writing a lot and stuff, because that's my comfort zone now. So if I take anything from this actual drawing, this drawing of the first day, the first drawing of the first day, that shape right there is everything, because it really does speak to me in that it speaks to frustration to me. So that's the review of the first bunch of work I did. Today I do the same thing. I'm gonna throw some music in and I'm just gonna draw. Today I'm gonna reference yesterday's work, but I'm not going to write anything. I'm going to draw, and we're gonna see what comes out. I think I have a pencil around here somewhere, which would be fantastic. But I got a bunch of paper, I got a pen, and hopefully a pencil. I'm gonna get to it, and I'll check back in at the end. Music, music, music. All right. So I've been going for about an hour and a half. I have some. I at least got shapes out today, and they don't fully connect, but there's some semblance. I kind of started. I'm gonna throw them up on the screen now, so you can see them. This first guy, let's see. I started kind of with these blocks that are across the whole thing. Now I've done this before in drawings, and to me, if there's a chart from this when I was mapping out my life, I did kind of a chart that was a representation of the fragmented nature of my. Really, it was like social growth within each stage of my life. So again, lower school, middle school, upper school, college, restaurants, big uptick, and then there was a fall off from my. Every restaurant I worked at, the bar was shorter and shorter and shorter, and it was actually trending downwards as opposed to upwards, which would be reversal of growth, so whatever the opposite of that was. But those bars kind of got shorter as my life went on because my cycle tightened up in terms of searching for acceptance, achieving it, and then not knowing what to do, so leaving again and again and again. So the bars, I was trying to play into that aspect of the pieces getting smaller and kind of, I guess in this it kind of trends upwards, but it's the direction doesn't really have much to do with it, but just different phases of my life, and they seem to get shorter and smaller and fall off towards, in this drawing, the right side of the drawing. And then there's the connecting line, which I don't even know what that was. That was kind of just a way to connect it, a tube that is, each block is a phase of my life. I'm traveling through those phases of my life, so that is what that tube would be. It gets a bit jargoned as it gets further on. And then the character in the right is just kind of, that's a feeling of how I feel. So that it's a continuation of this path that gets jargoned into a character, which is me. That is the outcome. And it feels rather disgusting and gross and kind of uncomfortable and just ugh. So that's the culmination of those various stages tied together through the path, which is me, and the path that I've taken. Now, on the left is it's a creature upside down trying to hold on to the earlier phase to retain that, whatever that was, which in my case was, the first semblance of acceptance, which would have been my first restaurant, the first two restaurants, the Waverly Inn and Wine, and then Oceana, and my relationship with Ryan, which was a person who accepted me and I forged a relationship with, a bond with. That is that chapter, that good chapter that I'm holding on to, but he's missing teeth, the character. So it is dying. That phase is dying and or dead, but I'm still holding on to it. I didn't really get to the top right of the photo, which is kind of unmarked. Like these blocks don't really interact with much because I think to me it kind of like that at this point now, they just, all the efforts that I have in my future endeavors and my new jobs and my attempts to recreate the beginning are lost. They're for nothing. They're just gone, and they don't really tie to anything. They exist with like in their own little microcosm of an experience, and then they're gone. Like I'm not really holding on to those. It's just something that continually happens. And then I put some holes through here, holes in the paper, so to speak, through which some of these things are traveling. And I think, like, to me, the one in the bottom left, where the square in the bottom left corner is about to fall into, it's as if, that's the beginning stage of this process, and where this block would touch down and find some stability, there is none. There's a hole. There's nothing, because that is, like I think that's where my adoptedness kind of plays into it. There is no foundational structure to hold up this journey. It's empty. It's built on nothing. It's built on, again, this path, which means nothing on its own. As I get to the top, right, where this little joint is by the creature on the left, there is kind of like a cutout. It's supposed to be like a puck or like a cutout of something, some kind of surface off of which this path changes direction. The thing that it is bouncing off of is rooted in nothing, seemingly. It's just a floating disc. So there, again, is no stability, nothing to hold on to, nothing stable to ground this upward momentum. And I'm, again, traveling back down through these different steps, but this time it's a regression. It's downwards. So this whole thing doesn't really, it's not fully cohesive, but there's traces of these things that I'm trying to put out there. So again, getting back to, I'll put it up on the screen, the timeline where I threw down words that really, like, each stage here is connected, but the emotions that happen within each stage, I put down evocative words, or words that represent what I feel in those stages. I'm trying to translate some of this to a visual representation with my old style and just get the shapes out of my pen, and just start moving. But this is not complete, but this is in the direction of kind of what I want to do, what I'm trying to do. So I'll take this as a victory today, the second day drawing. I'll hold on to elements of this, but this is obviously not the final thing. It's just some ideas. And then the second, I'll throw it up on the screen. Much more simple, just trying to get some shapes again out and just be a little less intense, trying to be a little more playful, just less boundaries. I really started with the pipe here. This is kind of like a pipe, and I was trying to get to the idea of specifically the nature versus nurture thing. There is no nature. I don't know how to represent a lack of something as like negative space, I suppose. But nurture is what takes things, kind of takes you and your qualities and just things in general into a pipe and shoots you out the other end in a different condition. So the idea of like entering one side of a pipe and being one thing, exiting the other and being another. But then on whatever side is the intake, it needs to represent that not much is going in the intake. There's nothing going in the intake. And by the time I get to the exhaust, the other end, where it gets shot out of, whatever's coming out of that end is lacking in substance. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to portray that. I suppose it could have more to do with like the surrounding elements of the area on the other end, right? Like whatever comes out the other end doesn't quite fit, but that it's not that it doesn't fit, it's that whatever comes out the other end is built from a lack of something, so it is therefore void of the potential structure that is being produced through the nurture. You know, again, tying just to like literally, as a bunch of jargon if you're just jumping in now, but the being adopted provides people with a lack of personal identity, inherent identity that you just have and is right. Therefore, when you take that identity and you apply nurture and the beginning stages of your life, which kind of shape your raw material into a different version and or a completely different version, that completely different version is based off of the original. But if the original didn't exist, then you are just a culmination of the nurture part of your life and are missing the core of it. So that's what I'm trying to get at here. But it's been a bunch of time and I need to get out there and I got a couple things I got to do. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to leave this here today. It's not a bad amount of work. This is day 2 of trying to switch over to artistic mode and tie some of these things together via visual. Yeah. Here's what we're going to do. I got to go pick up the car in Queens, so I got to get back on the subway. I'm going to bring my skateboard again. We're going to do a little skate block or so. I'm going to think about it on the way there, and then hopefully get out for a ride in a little bit, but I'll check back in at that point. So need to let my brain breathe a little bit here. All right, I'll check back in. So I am definitely having issues with my clutch, but I think it's minor. Like that I don't feel the slippage happening really all that much, except for when I get in the upper ends of the rev range. What I do think is happening is I'm becoming acclimated to this bike like more than before. So there's a period in which, and really by a period I mean like the first year and a half that I've had this bike, that I really just kind of rode like this, like just kind of chilled. And then recently, in the past year, I've started revving it out and really like giving it the full beans. I think I've become accustomed to that speed, and it just feels a little more boring. Again, yeah, I think the comparison with like how I was riding to that new type of riding was exciting and felt lively, and then I got accustomed to it. So I look down often and I'm at like 80, and I'm like, oh, well, that's actually faster than usually I was cruising at on this bike. And I did get here rather quickly. It was just, you know, I think it's a mix of both things. I think there's a little bit of slippage happening at the top end of the rev range, and then also I think it's just kind of boring once I get there. So that is my takeaway. However, again, I need to do my service, and this will be the bike that I service first, solely because I use it so often. It's like my main mode of transportation. So we will see when they open it up. They're gonna have to change the oil anyway, and I think they're gonna get in there and see if I need to replace any clutch plates. But this bike still feels fantastic, and I'm absolutely in love with it. I'm gonna get off here, do a little U-turn, get back to Manhattan. I gotta get into the city. Sorry, student driver. You're gonna have to learn how to deal with me someday. All right. Yeah, look at that. Got off just in time. That is not what I want to be doing right now. The way back? That looks all right. That looks okay, guys. I'll settle for that. Question is, how do we get into the city? That is the view. That's the $1 million view, and that's the moment. Oh, geez, I don't know. I can't take you Williamsburg Bridge because there's a lot of police over there. So I'm going to have to do for Manhattan Bridge, or we call Brooklyn Bridge. But Brooklyn Bridge gets you off right in the middle of Cop Central. It's all courthouses and whatnot, and 1,000 million cameras. So Manhattan Bridge it is. That's the takeaway. Manhattan Bridge. All right, Honda. Odysseus. There we go. Nice little cruise, guys. All right, so yeah, today, day 2 of drawing and expressing myself through non-words, just
well, pencil on paper, felt rather good. I got some shapes out, which is great, because that is like, that's my bread and butter, guys. The shapes and creatures and monsters, and when those aren't flowing, that means I'm really stuck, because that is that's like a tap straight into my brain. So I was able to get some forms out, and some kind of like continuity in terms of like the story I'm trying to tell. There's a section of those like broken up lines that I started with, the little blocks. That's kind of crucial. If I look at like most of my work from when I was younger, that's a kind of a through line. I think it's visually just like a nice breakup, but it also like, I think it always seemed incomplete to me. It seemed like, why are these things not together? And I just like that concept. I never could identify why. I think it's like, if I were to try to ascribe meaning to it or attach meaning to it, it would be that is life, right? Like, that's most of life. It just doesn't fit the way it's supposed to, and like oftentimes it's fragmented and broken up. So like, I think that discomfort and that like that the frustration that comes from like something that should be together and isn't, being solidified on paper, perhaps that's something to do with why I always kind of worked it in a little bit. And then in turn, like the lines, like when I draw a actual character or a shape, sometimes I found that like sometimes I draw some stuff and it doesn't feel good doing it. It could look good, but if it doesn't feel good doing it, I don't like it. Like, it's very much about the process of actually executing, whether it's the line or the shape or whatever. That's super important to me in my drawing. So today things were kind of flowing out quite nicely, and the resulting product in the bottom right hand corner, that little monster guy, not at all like balanced or like how I would arrange it, but I felt good drawing it, so I just left it alone. Again, the themes I was playing with was like the different stages of life and the ups and downs of that and how they're all interconnected. Scale of 1 to 10, I'm like a 4 in terms of satisfaction with how I represented that, but I did get the elements on the page, so that's a baby step, you know. And I'll keep doing that same shape and that arrangement over and over again until it sits right and I can add on to it and branch off of it. It's kind of how I work. So happy about it, not thrilled, but very happy with the overall process. It's a far cry from yesterday, so I'll take it. I was gonna go pick up the car, but I ended up not doing that just because I didn't want to be in the car. They gotta find parking, then but I did want to skate a little bit. Maybe I'll save that for tomorrow, since I've hit this place thanks to this process that like I think I can approach exercise again. Okay, this sounds really weird, but I have learned to be very wary of exercise as something to make me feel better, because I was always extremely fit, but I became like I was always obsessive about whatever phase I was in, whether it was boxing or running or weightlifting. It was always like it dominated my life, and it was always in response to like a down period. So like the times that I tried to stop drinking, it became my everything, and it was an addiction in itself. So it becomes very dangerous because it does feel good, it does release endorphins, but what I found is I become so dependent on that my mood is very fragile. Like, you know, if I don't go to the gym a couple days, it really risks swinging the pendulum in the other direction. So, you know, now I'm sober. I've been sober for 5 years. I avoided exercise after stopping drinking. It was really motorcycles that I focused on. And so I'm just kind of approaching it with the same caution as I did when I stopped drinking. I finally found some footing in terms of, you know, figuring myself out and my potential future moves. So I don't want to rock the boat too much. I think the skating is like the perfect middle ground, because it's not a full out like workout session. It involves moving around and transportation, so it's kind of like a delicate exercise. And then I would like to start running, but again, that's super, I don't know. I'm a little wary about that one, so I think I'll maybe do like a run once or twice a week, but I'm approaching that point where I need to. First of all, I'm out of shape, is what we discovered yesterday. I need some physical aspect to this period. Motorcycle is not doing it. It's fun intellectually. It makes me feel a certain way when I rev the engine, but I need some exercise. So in the next week, that is to come. Maybe a morning run or a skate session. Work that into the footage. Again, this whole thing is such an experiment. It's just like, oh my god, this guy is fucking killing me. I gotta get around this guy. Hold on a minute, guys. Hold on a minute. Please bear with me. Come on, guys. There we go. Jesus Christ. Alright, we're free now. Yeah, I think exercise is the next thing coming. This whole thing is very experimental. I'm throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. I am entering this new artistic phase, but the artistic will get burnt out without a balancing act, so I need some exercise. And I think, given that we're halfway through the process, right, the difficult part was laying stuff out because it's uncharted territory, stuff I really haven't thought about in depth. So that was like, out of all the things that I'm doing, the newest to me. And that took about half the time. It was day 15, 16 that I kind of hit that comma, that chapter mark, and then moving on to the artistic. It's going to take a minute to tap into the artistic, but it's something I'm so familiar with, and it's so intuitive and so natural that I don't foresee that phase needing like the same amount of days to comprehend and digest and get stuff out of. There will be a rather intense period of trying to connect the two, like once I get some shapes and drawings and concepts laid out visually, tying that together in a nice little package might take a minute, but I think 30 days is the perfect amount of time for this experiment. And again, at the end of the 30 days, it's not the end of my journey, it's just the end of this major push to try to get myself out of this thing, because I need a job. I need to be able to take a job. No, I'm not going to act erratically 2 weeks in and just be like I quit, you know. So I need to reach some semblance of sanity so that I can handle myself like a fucking adult, you know. And I'm close. I made a tremendous amount of progress. I feel so much more at ease, so much more at peace just with myself and with the overall state of my existence. That's not only to do with the work that I'm doing, it's to do with the you know, I made some life changes. I've seen a lot of people for casual coffee and hangouts, and you know, my conversations with people have been a little different because I'm a little lighter and I can think outside of myself in the times that I'm meeting people, and really, you know, ask good questions about people, hear how they're doing, hear their struggles, and like I've just opened up a bit through this whole thing. So not only is it because I've discovered things about myself, but I think that has facilitated the ease with which I can approach the outside world. So like I'm getting a lot more out of life after the first 15 days. And that means I'm getting better versions of the people I'm with, because you know, people like to be heard, people want to be seen. As you can tell through this vlog, I want to be seen, right? Like other people want that too. So it's like I'm able to provide that now in an authentic, genuine way, and I just really enjoy where I'm at right now. So gonna keep pushing, but very thankful for everybody who, y'all know who you are if you watch these videos and you hear this part. Like, people I've had coffee with, people I've had phone calls with, people I've just taken a walk with. I've done quite a bit of that, and I thank every single person who's been a part of this period, this month of my life, because it's been pivotal. And I'm very thankful for the people who are helping me out here. Namely, I left this to the end just because it goes without saying, my fiance Ray has made all of this possible and has been so ridiculously understanding through all of this stuff. Like, it's insane. Throughout this journey, a 38-year-old man falling apart, and she has been the best partner on the planet in existence. so supportive. So if you're watching this, which I know you will be, because I will be editing this next to you later tonight, I love you. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, a little bit of an open stretch here. Can we have some fun? That was nice. That was nice. That was nice. All right, I'm gonna put my music on. We're gonna chill out. We're gonna vibe out while we hit the rest of this trip that you guys have all seen multiple times. Guys, oh, gotta put the kickstand down, can't forget about that. All right, guys, I'm gonna cut the video today here. I'm going to meet a friend at Thai Diner, which is just that way, I think a block or two that way. Absolutely gorgeous day, really enjoying this. Good day too for drawing on medium. Happy about it, but medium is better than not happy, so I'll take what I can get. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I will check in tomorrow, which will be day 3, and perhaps I will go somewhere and draw. Although, it was kind of nice to do it inside. I don't know. I haven't figured that out, but I'll check it tomorrow morning. Thanks for tuning in. Today is day 17, I believe I said. So, tomorrow will be 18. Good shit. Good shit. Peace.